Hey, what's going on, guys? It's time for another book review. Here we're going to be taking a look at the Master Archive Mobile Suit Full Armor Gundam guide here. So the Master Archive series is a really great series that I'm sure you've probably heard me and others talk about before. They make them for a number of different mobile suits, so this one is specifically focused on the Full Armor Gundam here, of course. So it's got all kinds of stuff in here about the Full Armor Gundam. A lot of text as well, and of course it's all in Japanese, but a lot of really great illustrations. So especially, I mean, if you're a fan of the mobile suit, of course, then you'll like this. But especially if you're into doing a lot of like detailing up on your kits, scratch building, and a lot of modifying, these kind of illustrations are really good for reference for that, for like how to do your detailing on your kits and stuff like that. If you're doing a lot of scribing, things like that, adding details, all of that. So these books are great for that. Let's go ahead and take a look here at the Full Armor Gundam guide. Now, the list price for this is 2,700 yen, so about $25, $30 around there, give or take, for your list price. We've got this extra little bit on here, and then the actual cover is just black and white here with illustration of the Gundam. Very cool on the front and back like that. So I'm just going to toss this aside for the time being. And to be honest, between like the jacket artwork and this artwork, I much prefer this one. Is more to my taste. I mean, that this 3D render, I mean, is cool of the Full Armor Gundam, and you think they usually have a 3D render for the cover on most of them, but this artwork, I mean, come on, look at that. That's awesome. So, all right, let's crack it open and see what we got in here. So, yeah, again, a lot of the text I can't really speak much to just because it's all in Japanese. I haven't translated much of any of it at all, so we'll just take a look through most of the pictures, basically, and here is another 3D render there of the Full Armor Gundam in a hangar base there, and then some more renders here, flying in space, a couple of kind of action scenes there, and then just kind of exiting the hangar or just floating in space there. Over here on the next page, Project FSWS, Federal Suit Weapon System, or a full armor system here for that. So some more flying poses in space. And this portion of the book, honestly, not that interesting to me. I mean, it's cool to see 3D renders, but it might as well be just like a still from a video game or something like that. Not particularly interesting. So we've got a first part here talking about just the RX-72 Gundam, because of course the Full Armor Gundam is based off of the RX-72, so we got to start with that. So we got some color illustrations over here, a nice line art illustration here. Again, love to see that line art. And again, if you have a scanner, then these line arts, I'm sure you can probably find these online already. But if you can't, or if you prefer to do it yourself, you can scan these, and these make really good images for testing out color schemes. So if you got an RX-72 kit you want to paint up, scan this, pop it into Photoshop, block in your colors, and then you can test out your different painting ideas. So that's why I love to see some line art like this. Unfortunately, I personally don't have access to a scanner, so it's not really much use to me, but usually I can find what I'm looking for when I'm looking around online. So then we've got the Full Armor Gundam. So here's the same liner that we saw on the outside of the book. Looks awesome here, and then the colored in illustration over here. So as far as who does the artwork in these, let me see. We've got all the staff here listed in the back, but yeah, I'm not sure offhand who does the illustration work for these books exactly. If you guys know, you can let me know. So the next page here, we have a different variant of that. So this one is basically with the Gundam in the original RX-72 colors, and then all the added armor is just in gray and yellow rather than, this one, which has a much different color scheme. Even like the base Gundam underneath is in like the white and green color scheme, whereas this one is the original color scheme with just the gray armor added on top of it. And that's pretty cool. I gotta say, I think that's the first time I've ever seen this color variant before, or at least as far as I can remember anyway, but it does look very cool, I gotta say. Might have to just keep that in mind if I'm ever painting a full armor variant Gundam. I quite like that, actually. It's pretty cool. Then another great reference for these is decals. So this is like a full guide of like all the markings around on here. So it's like zoomed in of all these little markings, so you actually have all the text, and the text of the markings is in English. So to say like armor, cover, detaching, mechanism, caution, including explosive bolt, things like that on these, and of course the big numbers and logos and everything. Rescue, emergency only, forced separating, purge, control. A little bit hard to read because it's like black text on top of dark green, but still very cool to see like all the markings and everything. So if you were interested in making your own markings as well, this is also a really good reference for just like getting ideas for how you might want to design your decals and then getting them printed out or something. or printing them out yourself. So I think we'll see some more of that later on in the guide here as well. But here's a couple more renders here of the gray variant of that, and then just the regular full armor Gundam. So a lot of this text I know is just like explaining the backstory of the Gundam and everything, and the development, I think. So if you are a big Gundam lore fan, there's probably a lot that you could glean from this if you just go through and take the time to translate the text. And then we have the blue variant. This one I am familiar with. This is in the Battle of Solomon version. This one was released as a P Bandai kit in master grade form, I know, and it's a pretty cool design as well. I like the full armor Gundam here in blue, and then with the black accents is pretty nice, and the orange accents as well too. Very cool. So I like that. It's just the same artwork, but just I think just the color is swapped basically. Another just kind of front and back view there. 3D render over here of the blue version in a battle scene, and then a couple more renders here of the white and the green version there. And then a full structure and system of full armor Gundam. So now it's going to be getting into the details of the full armor Gundam, talking about different aspects of the design. So first of all, we're talking about the head here. So we have a close-up illustration of the head and these kind of shoulder parts there. So we got close-up versions of that with the green version, the blue version, and then the green version, or a different green version actually. What's that? Oh, just a little bit different green color version of that over here. A couple more renders over here on this side, but again, really great for that close-up illustration if you were going to be detailing your kit, especially something larger like a perfect grade or a mega size kit where you can get really fine in there with those really super fine details. You got all that as a nice reference there for you. And then the chest. So we've got the chest unit here, nice big illustration of that. This similar type of these mechanical illustrations is something that used to be featured in the master grade manuals, and that's something that a lot of people loved about the master grade manuals, that they had those really nice illustrations, but they don't do that unfortunately anymore. So it's nice to see these again. This is not quite exactly in the same style, but similar to what we used to see in a lot of the older master grade manuals, so that's cool to see. And then weapons bay here, so basically the same illustration here, but we have this chest part opened up there, so you can see the weapons bay, basically the missiles stored there in the chest, and so you got a nice detail shot of that, how those are going to look, and over here, how those will look opened up. So we got a couple different variants of that there, it looks like, as well, so that's pretty cool. And then the 360 millimeter rocket cannon, so we've got a nice big illustration of that, which is basically, I mean, kind of similar as this one. It's just got this little bit that you couldn't see once it's actually equipped, but ultimately it's kind of like the same illustration there. And a very dark illustration of the Gundam down there. A couple more renders over here in flight. And then the sensor turret. This one is really cool as well too. I'm not familiar with this version of the kit, but this is a sensor turret, I guess, on the backpack of this one. So it's just for added sensors, I guess, there on the back. And you even have these hatches open with a lot of really nice little tiny detail inside. So showing some of like the internal details of this section, which is very cool to see. So that's really awesome. Really great reference for doing scratch building and detailing up stuff on your kit. So. And then the ransel armor, there's the backpack here, got an illustration of that, just showing that and some more detail. This is colored in version of that. The shoulder armor over here, very detailed illustration of the shoulder armor, again, very good for reference there. And the arm armor, so just these parts which will kind of clamp around the arm. So you have basically two halves, and then the shield part will then attach onto there. So I love, one thing I really like about the design is those kind of clamps on the armor. The armor looks designed in a way that is like realistically how it would attach onto the Gundam, I think. So I really like the design of the full armor Gundam. So here we have the twin beam rifle. So you got kind of like the base of the design, which you can see there, and then like how that attaches onto the actual double beam aspect of that. So that looks very nice. And then over here, the extra barrels stored in there. So you've got your extra barrels which store into this contraption which attaches onto the shield on the other arm. Not a lot of variants of the kit, I think, actually include this. I'm not sure, actually, come to think of it, if any version of the kit includes that on the arm. I think probably like a Robot Damashi or a Gundam Fixfiguration version of the full armor Gundam, I think may include that, but not the kit, as far as I can remember. The lower body armor, which we would call in English, most of us call just the skirting armor, is here. And so you've got the attachment point for the beam sabers there. So really detailed illustration of the mechanism which holds all the beam sabers there. So that's pretty interesting. And then once that's closed up or folded up into the back skirt there as well, you can see that. Helium control core. I'm not really sure what that is about. I'm guessing that's the front part here at the crotch bar, because there's nothing really much else to see about that. Leg thrusters. So we've got those, of course. We also got the knee folded out with the tiny little missiles in the knee as well. And some beautiful detailing around on this leg armor there. Also, the ground thruster, which is just this section here attached onto the side of the leg. So you got the ground thruster, another closer up detailed picture of that, detailed illustration of that portion of the kit, and then the sole armor, which would be the sole as in like the sole bottom of the feet. The armor for the bottom of the feet, or just what the bottom of the foot looks like, so you can see like there's like the main Gundam foot there, and then the added layers around that, like an onion. So he's got a lot of nice detail there underneath the feet as well. The core fighter, so you even got some information about this here as well. Very detailed image of the cockpit there, illustration I should say, and the color variants, the kind of the original color scheme, the blue color scheme, and this gray one. I think inside the green version, like this, anyway, the main green version of the Full Armor Gundam, I believe, if I remember correctly, the core fighter is in just gray like that. It doesn't actually have any green on it, as far as I can remember. And then the Full Armor Gundam ground type, so a little bit different variant here now. This is one, again, that I'm not really particularly very familiar with. Oh, this is the one that we saw earlier when I was talking about the head. Over here, this one, this is the ground type variant. So that's why I noticed the chest vents were a little bit different on this. They're vertical instead of horizontal. So it reminded me of the Narrative Gundam. But so this one, it looks like, is the one that also has the extra sensor unit kind of thing on the backpack there as well. It's got the cannon and then the sensor unit and then the missile pod, similar to the gun cannon there on the back as well. So very cool. It's got the beam sabers attached onto the side of the shield armor there on the arm. And the double beam rifle is a much smaller kind of double beam cannon looking sort of thing there on the arm, rather than being a handheld double beam rifle like with the regular Full Armor Gundam. So quite different design. The chest, the skirting armor, the knees, the legs. It's a very different design for this one. So quite interesting. And then the Full Armor ground type. And then over here. So I guess this is based off of the prototype Gundam. Yeah, that makes sense, because this front ankle armor, I saw that and thought, oh yeah, it's like the prototype Gundam. So I guess this one is based off of the prototype Gundam, which is here in black and gray. So always love that color scheme there for the Gundam. Very cool color scheme for the prototype. And the back side illustration there. And then the ground type cold district specification version. It's got a cold districts type version of this as well. Just kind of all in black and white and gray mostly, with a little bit of yellow there for the vents, a little bit of red around on the head. But again, really cool color scheme for this. I wish we would get a kit of this, because we don't have a kit. We actually don't even have a regular, just HGUC version of the regular Full Armor Gundam, so I would like to see that first, I suppose. The Master Grade looks great. I still have never built the Master Grade anyway. And then here is the decal guide for that as well. So again, you got all your decals, or I guess they wouldn't be decals, all your markings. All the markings all laid out here for that, how those would look. Again, really super cool to see all of these: danger, high voltage, high energy supply, hazardous voltage, danger, full charged in here for like the E-packs, it looks like there for the cannon or something. So love to see that. Yes, here, and the B-type. So the B-type with a much different cannon there on the back, this kind of massive missile launcher there, I should say. And then the beam rifle, the double beam rifle on the side of the arm is also longer. And this color scheme is super cool. That kind of camo pattern of blue and gray there is such a cool color scheme. I really like this color scheme. Is there another image of that? Hopefully a much larger one. Yeah, we do have it there. So there's the line artwork for that on the front, and line artwork for the back, and then the decal marking guide for that as well. So all the markings that go on the special equipment there on the back, really cool. And so you just got a nice big image of what this looks like for the color scheme. So yeah, really love this color scheme and would love to try this out on a kit. So we'll have to think about that, seeing if I can find a good test subject. I mean, if I ever get the Master Grade Full Armor kit, I think this is very likely a color scheme that I would go with for that, because this is probably my favorite color scheme for the Full Armor Gundam, I gotta say. Although I kind of like all the different color variants for this quite a bit. This one is particularly cool. And then we have the Heavy Gundam, of course, similar to the Full Armor Gundam. The Heavy Gundam is, I guess, a cousin of that. Much different design. It's kind of a similar concept, but the design is quite different. He has the visor, of course, the cool sunglasses, instead of just the regular Gundam eyes. So there you got the original color scheme of the Heavy Gundam. There are a couple of other different color schemes of this one as well too, so I'm sure we'll see those here momentarily. We got the backside illustration of that. How the cannon, the backpack is quite different as well too. How the cannon is a different type cannon, and then how it plugs into the backpack with that like hose bit there. And it's quite different. And the flame launcher, of course, the massive arm launcher cannon thing that this thing has is pretty intense. So there's a smaller illustration of that, not that big. I would kind of wish that they would have a larger illustration of that, but maybe there isn't. But you do have a relatively basic illustration here of the flame launcher there for the arm, and the marking guide for this as well. So again, just really cool to see this. And this also is a cool color scheme. You know, brown, you don't see a whole lot of brown mobile suits, so I like this with the red accents and white accents, white secondary color there. And then some close-up illustrations here of the head, upper body rear, and the leg. So again, these are really super detailed, really nicely detailed here, crazy amount of detail in these illustrations. So that's really awesome to see here for the head and like the top of the chest there, the back side, the front of the chest, and the shoulder armor you can see all over here. The leg, tons of detail up underneath the feet, that's crazy, and then all along the leg there. So again, really great reference for detailing up your kits. So here's some 3D renders there of the Heavy Gundam flying in space, and the Heavy Gundam variants. So we have this dark red variant, this white variant, which is similar to the white variant we saw of the Full Armor Gundam a little bit earlier. This one here is similar color scheme to that. And then the black variant, so some cool color scheme ideas here for you guys. This one is kind of similar to the Red Warrior color scheme there, isn't it? And then the double flame launcher. So he's getting real crazy with double shields and double flame launchers on the arm. So super heavy variant of the Heavy Gundam. It's Ultra Heavy Gundam. That's very cool. It'll be pretty intense. Some 3D renders of that, flying around in space, flying around by the moon. Looking very cool. Ah, yes, and then the Full Armor Gundam number 7, the Full Armor Gundam 7th. I love this design as well. This one does have an HG kit. It doesn't look exactly like this. It's missing like these missile pods on the side of the legs, and so it's a little bit slightly different. But the HG kit, despite being a little bit older, is actually really quite nice. If you guys are fans of this design, I would highly recommend that to you guys. Hopefully someday we get a master grade Full Armor Gundam 7th. Don't really expect that to happen anytime soon, but you know, fingers crossed. I really like this design. It's really cool. Variant of the Full Armor Gundam here as well. The massive cannon that it's got on its back is really cool, and just the design, I really like this. So you got a really nice big line art there for that as well. Got the back side of the line art over here, and then on this side, just kind of an exploded view, how that's going to look with like the tanks removed on the back, the cannon removed, the missile pods removed on the legs. You can see just how some of those parts attach onto the main body up there. And then some 3D renders of the Full Armor Gundam 7th, and all of the markings for that as well. So this is really cool to see, and I love that like two-tone yellow and red striping part there on the leg. I'm not sure I've ever seen a striping bit quite like that before, so that's pretty cool to see. Pretty sure the HG also doesn't have these extended out kind of thruster unit kind of things on the back of the leg. I'm pretty sure it just has like a kind of normal shaped leg without that bit sticking out the back of there, as far as I can remember. The feet are also a little bit different. They're more extended out with these little kind of claw bits there. So anyway, this design, there's a lot of other differences between this design and the HG. The HG definitely is not following this design for the Full Armor Gundam 7th. It's not quite the same, but it's still pretty cool, I gotta say. And then we got some detail images here of the beam cannon, the beam rifle, some more of the markings for the weapons and the fuel tanks there on the back as well. So that's pretty cool to see, and it's pretty interesting how it has like the verniers on the fuel tanks as well too. It kind of makes sense, right? That's a pretty unique feature there of the fuel tanks for this as well. I really like the beam rifle design for the Gundam 7th also. It's a pretty like bulky, heavy looking beam rifle as well, aside from this massive beam cannon that it has on its back. And some nice close-up illustrations here too of the twin beam gun on the back side of the arm. The upper body over here, you got a lot of details in there, showing that in some pretty extreme detail. And then the leg missile pod here, that bit that attaches onto the side of the leg, so you can see how that attaches over here with this cool illustration, the sole armor, the detail up underneath the feet in there, the vent and everything. And then just the base Gundam 7th without all the full armor. So this is obviously the Gundam that's underneath the full armor Gundam 7th, just the regular Gundam 7th here. And again, such a really cool design. Even if we got just a new kit of just the base form like this, I'd be happy, because just the regular, Gundam 7th is very cool. The full armor is great, even just the base Gundam here. I love to see that. We got the marking guide for that as well. Tons of markings for that. A really great reference for all those markings. And the heavy full armor Gundam. So this would be the fully full armor Gundam version of the Gundam 7th. So you have the regular Gundam 7th, the full armor version, and then the heavy full armor version, which has the just massive stuff that has an even bigger cannon, even bigger cannons on the side, and then massive fuel tanks and thruster units on the back of it. It's just super. It's sort of like the Deep Striker, but it actually has legs on it this time. I'm not sure the legs are going to really do it much good as it's flying around in space with all this massive equipment on it, but it's basically like the Deep Striker with legs, sort of. So you got a detailed illustration here of just the main cannon and then the side cannons here. So it's showing you kind of where those are on the design, and then the full color illustration here of that. It's such a really cool design. I would love to get a kit of this. Don't really expect that anytime soon, but hey, I never expected a kit of the Deep Striker either. So, stranger things have happened, I suppose. So we got a few more 3D renders here of that. And then over here about the GPO1, suddenly, why did we jump to the GPO1? I didn't skip a page, did I? Suddenly we're looking at the GPO1 FB over here and the Dendrobium. I guess maybe it's making some sort of comparison to that for some reason. I don't know. Anyway, we're talking about the GPO1 and the Dendrobium over here all of a sudden. So we've got that. We've got the full armor Gundam NT1. Of course, the Alex, I guess, is technically a full armor Gundam sort of version, I suppose, as well. This is a little bit different from the Chobam armor that we see in the anime. It's very similar. Of course, it's in the same gray colors, but the design is a little bit different. Definitely, you can see the shoulder armor. The leg armor is a little bit different on this. So I guess the full armor NT1 maybe was a planned design that they didn't get around to actually making because of what happened in the anime, how it was sort of destroyed anyway. So I guess maybe the Chobam armor was just kind of like a temporary armor system, possibly. Again, I don't know the backstory of that to say with much certainty, but that's what I can guess. I'm sure one of you guys know, and you'll tell me in the comments how wrong I am about that. But there's the backside illustration for that, a couple of color variants, green and the kind of more blue and dark gray version compared to just kind of the standard gray. Again, basically the same color as what we see for the standard Chobam armor. And then kind of darker blue and gray color scheme for that as well. It does look pretty cool in green, I gotta say, there as well. And then of course we have the decal or marking guide for that as well. So lots of cool markings for that. You have the 4 and the triangle marking, of course, they're going to use for that. Very iconic to the Alex. And then just the regular NT1 Alex, so just the illustration here of just the line art of just the basic Alex. And then over here with the Chobam armor on the chest. So you got some nice details for that. And then the backside illustration, color illustration front and back over here, or line art, I should say. So love all of the artwork in here. The Gunner Gundam, this is another one that I'm not very familiar with. It's got it's got a combination of eyes and a visor there. So it's got the regular Gundam eyes, then a visor over the top of that. And a little kind of like a sensor sort of unit looking thing up on top of the shoulder there. And pretty cool design here for this. I gotta say, I like the kind of very chunky angular design there around the sides of the legs and everything. So it really kind of reminds me of like an AWACS-like type design, sort of like a reconnaissance type Gundam, but Gunner Gundam doesn't really sound like the name of a reconnaissance mobile suit. And then the Perfect Gundam, of course, we've got the Perfect Gundam here as well. Pretty wild and crazy, super souped up, crazy design with all sorts of stuff here. So line art illustration here, color illustration over here, and then the back side of that, color variant of that. I definitely like the Perfect Gundam here a lot more in this just gray color scheme, because in the original color scheme, it's just so too colorful for me, and based on like the source material, I mean, it makes sense, but I much prefer it in this more grounded, just all gray color scheme like that. Definitely looks very cool, so I like that color scheme for it. And then the marking guide for that as well, lots of cool markings for that. Perfectize Project for Gundam, that's a pretty interesting title for that. But there you go. And that is it. That's it for the book. So, all right, super cool book. Glad we got around finally to taking a look at this. Sorry if any of you guys had been waiting. I do also have the Master Archive here for the Victory Gundam on hand that we're going to be taking a look at. I'll try to get around to showing you guys that in the very near future. Hopefully this was interesting for any of you who are interested in this type of stuff. If you haven't seen anything about these Master Archive books before, and this is kind of your first time like being introduced to them, definitely check some of them out. Some of them can be a little bit more expensive, a little bit harder to find because they're a very popular series, like even in Japan too, these. So a lot of people collect them. So you'll probably have to go to like secondhand markets, Japanese auction sites, things like that to try to get your hands on some of these. But definitely recommend checking out some. There's some really cool ones out there for some different mobile suits. So even if you don't necessarily want this one particularly for the full Armor Gundam, there's other ones out there that you might find interesting. So check some of them out. As always, guys, thank you to USA Gundam Store for their support. If you guys want to check out the link to USA Gundam Store, that's down below. And you can use my code there, ZakuAurelius10, to save 10% off everything there on this site. So thank you so much for the support, and thank you for the support here on my channel as well. Liking, subscribing, commenting, all of that. Really appreciate it, guys. And until next time, y'all have a great day. I'll see you later. Bye-bye.